to my computer. There we go. Thank you. This is the RE Implementation Lab for Soul Matters for the April theme of Emergence. And we're here this morning on the second day of spring, yay, hey, to talk about the challenges and the opportunities and the takeaways that we might get from each other for emergence as a theme. So by way of introduction, I started saying, hey, Karina, I started thinking about emergence, and the first thing that popped into my mind from a children's point of view was, it's about emergency, right? It's the same word. And so you might see in that packet, the way I introduced emergence was, what's the difference between emergence and emergency? So that they immediately access something that they might know about. And the difference is that emergence arises from something. And there's a little blurb about the Latin emerger. Let's see. All right. The other things I did, and that's on this sheet, we, of course, have all these holidays in April. And so I tried to take a view of the emergence for Easter, emergence in Passover, and emergence for Earth Day. So what's coming out? And I didn't want to be totally geographically focused. Many of us are experiencing the emergence of the plants and the spring things. But those people living in Arizona or California, or maybe even people up in Maine, they're not seeing much emergence yet either. So I tried not to be, yeah, exactly. Nothing's going to be emerging for a while in Pam's locale and all this crazy weather. And then I did what I love to do, which is give you guys some way of celebrating our faith. And that particular month of April is Channing's birthday. And I found some wonderful things about how he loved children and that he could be considered. Now, I'm a storyteller, so I take the liberal viewpoint of things instead of the actual. But if you go into Elizabeth Palmer Peabody's original book called Reminiscences of Dr. Reverend Channing, she talks about how he had this look that the children would just, he was so gentle and he had these big eyes, and this is 18th century language, but that he asked the children up to the pulpit after the sermon to give them a for all ages. So in a way, I think we as religious educators could consider him maybe the founder of the for all ages format. I think it'd be okay to do that. The other thing I found out is that you can go to these original documents on the web now. Many archives are just printing these pages from 1865, and so you can read the originals. And that was a fascinating discovery for me. So Channing's birthday, and then the wonder of all these women, and I don't want to belabor our, dead white Unitarians too much, but this particular thing about Channing and this woman, Elizabeth Palmer Peabody, who as a young adult used to walk with him on Saturdays and help him evaluate his sermon every Saturday. And then when she became one of the publishers of the Dial newsletter, which was the big deal for the Transcendentalists, and Margaret Fuller and all these people coming to her bookstore, she published, where am I going with it? She published some of his sermons in this Transcendentalist newsletter. So I think it was really interesting and worth our attention as religious educators for that Channing emergence of for all ages. No one's ever asked that question before, to my knowledge. How did that start? So there you go. That's my submittal. And then I did a special day because I didn't want to ignore the emerging conversation about racism and racial justice in our denomination. And so I put in the caveat that, yeah, let's not just do it at the teach-ins, the white supremacy teach-ins. Let's make this an ongoing thing. Corinna certainly has mentioned that she's done this kind of thing. Yeah. So I thought it would be worthwhile saying, hey, what's emerging in our denomination? It's this new awareness of what's happening. So I'm hopefully that I'm not just repeating some of the resources that we've already been aware of, but adding a few more. And then also encouraging our teachers and our leaders to keep looking at it as an issue for us. Okay, a lot of talking by me. So what I'd like to do now is share a minute each, unless you have laryngitis like Pam, what you're doing for the theme of emergence and what challenges you've come across. And I will time it, but since there's, let's see, actually, could someone else time it? Could you raise your hand if you'd be willing to just like put a minute on your smartphone and then just raise your hand when a minute is done? There you go. Okay, thank you. Amanda, thank you. She's going to do that for us. Just a minute for everyone, and then if you see Amanda's hand go up, you know that it's time to push that mute button. Okay, challenges. So I'm going to call on you, if you're comfortable, and just say you want to lurk, that's fine, in the order on my screen, just to make it easy. And Bob, you're going to be the first one on my screen to share challenges of the theme of emergence. Oh, and you are still muted, but you're...
I am. I was double muted.
Double muted, yes.
So you started off by saying that we, of course, have our Easter plans all together, and I don't.
Yeah, all right.
And part of the reason is that I'm grappling with how to ascertain who might actually be there. In the past, holidays have been quite disruptive to our program. Kids going elsewhere and families having their family activities rather than church. And so right now I'm attempting to ascertain who might be there and what we might do there. So that's a big challenge this month. And together with that, it's pulling together a teaching staff that that will actually support it. Okay, and it's time for me to be quiet.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amanda. And next on my screen is Annie.
Hello.
Hello.
I mean, the truth is, our theme team is what we call a group that creates lesson plans, often based on what your work, Katie, for our kindergarten through fifth grade groups. And so we met a week and a half ago and sort of have our plans laid out. But, you know, clearly one of the challenges for us is how do we talk about Easter? And, you know, one of the things I appreciated that our senior minister talked about was, I mean, the story is so layered. And so there's lots of ways to explore the story. But I feel really strongly that our kids need the cultural literacy of knowing the resurrection story or the death story or whatever. So I'm going to tell the resurrection story, and we have a Saturday worship that's basically family worship followed by the egg hunt. And so I'm telling a kind of a very, a thing that focuses on why Jesus was so important and why, and the fact that people were heartbroken. And not so much trying to deal with resurrection. But then the next day, for kind of regular time for all ages, it's you know, kind of resurrection light. It's I'm not doing the heavy nail stuff, and but I guess in some ways that feels like the biggest challenge
Mm-hmm.
Is how do you kind of walk that? The other thing is that we're using your Earth Day, and we have one person on our team who loves science deeply, and I mean, not like the rest of us hate it or anything, but
And Annie, Amanda's giving us the same.
Oh, great. Okay, well then I'll stop.
But I can tell you're deep in thought, and
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Sorry I missed it.
That's okay. And I happen to know that Annie's in a very large church, and so this was going to be a big deal, capital B, capital D, I'm sure. All right, next on my screen is Mary.
Hi. I don't have Easter all covered. My minister is new. She's brand new. This is her first Easter. And so she's pretty much taking it on and has a big idea and how to handle everything. We, again, are doing the same thing. We have 2 different school districts, and kids are I have parents on spring break and kids on spring break. So I'm kind of trying to figure out who's going to be in the classroom. Basically, I just need teachers right now. And so we're still figuring it all out for April. I had no idea it was such a mess.
Great. All right, good challenge, Mary. Thank you. Kathleen, you're next on my screen.
Well, I too do not have anything set in stone for Easter. I know that in the past at the UU Church of Tucson, we did the canned food hunt and really liked it. I just don't think that my congregation here is ready for that big of a change yet. Mm-hmm. This being only my second Easter there. But I've been told that we don't want candy from the parents, not from the kids. Mm-hmm. And so I think that one thing that we're going to do is we do a thing where we hide one of each color, the Rainbow Principles colors of the eggs, the plastic eggs, and they're empty. And each child has to bring back one of each color to get a treat bag without candy in it. I think I might break that rule. Maybe they're ready for that one. But that's what I plan to do for Easter. Now, my challenge is the following week, I'm going to be out of town doing my daughter's baby shower, and I want something that is engaging but also easy for a substitute to do. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I don't want to focus on the Passover or the plagues or anything like that. I want to focus on something that's really uplifting, maybe something green related or, butterfly related, something like that. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that I was looking at.
Challenge is great. Thank you. Thank you. And next on my screen is Amanda, and I will give you your minute here.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, let's see. So I've liked a lot of things that I've heard people say about Easter. And one of the things that we have planned for the Easter service is I'm a circus performer, and so part of what I bring to my job is doing some work with the children around that. So we're going to, during the month of March, when the theme was balance, we did a bunch of balancing arts stuff, and then we also did some juggling. So we're going to start the Easter service with kind of a juggling parade with very colorful, sort of the theme, sort of around just joy, the joyous coming of spring, the way that the theme of joy plays into Easter. And I think sort of along the lines of what Annie said around wanting the kids to have at least basic understanding of the story of Easter, I think we'll probably spend time in RE this week trying to give them a sense of that story before the service happens. Thanks.
Great. All right. I'm going to skip Pam on my screen because she has laryngitis and go to Corinna.
Hello, sorry I was late.
Hi, no, it's good to see you.
where things are crazy hectic in Austin.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness.
But it's much better now. But I did have some language and support I needed to share with my families around that. I would normally consider a 5 Sunday month a challenge. But April, I'm glad kind of that we have 5, because that Easter Sunday service is its own beast. It will be in all ages at our 150 member church, which will be crowded. Spring break is over. I expect a lot of people. And we will be discussing Easter in a broad sense of why it's in the calendar where it is, and talking about memory and how we keep someone alive through their memory and modeling that behavior, and so broadening that Jesus story in that respect. And I will be setting up the children a little bit. I'm almost over. This Sunday in their stories at the end of the balance section, talking a little bit about the life cycle at that point already. And we even did that last Sunday with food chains. And so I can talk more about it later, but I will be doing chanting and racial justice, emergence of diversity on the last Sunday of the month, and I will be hosting Children's Chapel the second Sunday of the month, since we will be all together on the first. So that's why I'm happy about the 5 Sundays. So we really won't be introducing Emergence until the second Sunday.
Awesome. Well, as we all know, our time with our families, if we concentrate only on Sunday morning, is very short. An hour. Maybe some of us are more fortunate to have more than that. And so when I used to talk to my teachers in RE committee, I would say, do you realize that, let's take this example, Easter is 2 hours from now? Do you realize that Memorial Day is 8 hours from now, or however long? And that puts it in perspective of why we feel so crunched for time. It's 1 hour from now, really, So as those of you who have joined me on some of these other chats, I always remind us that we don't have much time with these kids. If the kids come every single hour of every single 9-month academic year, we'd have them for about 36 hours. And that's just barely a week in the teaching. And so imagine, so we give ourselves permission not to cover everything and to be patient with this. And we also give ourselves permission to look at the things which do impact them and make the memories. So you know that I wrote a book where I interviewed, I forget, 84 lifelong UUs about what kept them in the faith. And that's what I do. What I did was find 15 common threads of things that kept people in the faith, that made memories. And as a religious educator, what I realized is Sunday morning really isn't that important. That's my heresy. And the important things are remembering this certain time when a minister came up and said, you're a really good reader. Or when they were youth and they did some social service project. So keep it in perspective. We as religious educators don't always need to concentrate solely on Sunday morning. Sunday morning can be the tiny pearls between the big gems of what happens in our families' lives. All right, so that's sort of my ongoing theme when everybody starts going nuts about Sunday morning. However, Easter, well, Easter is when, for me, so I grew up in an atheist, humanist UU family. And my dad refused to go to church on Easter because he said, only the hypocrites go to church on Easter. And he, he's a Unitarian his whole life too. And so anyway, That's my own personal family story. And Pam knows my dad. You can just imagine him saying, only the hypocrites go to church on Easter. But the fact is, all these families show up on Easter. So they're new and visiting families. In my church in Colorado, they'd come on Palm Sunday too. Go figure. It's like, Palm Sunday? What are you doing on Palm Sunday? So there you go. For Easter, we're going to have lots of visitors. So that might also help you think about what message are you going to share for these visitors about UU. And as Annie is saying, it's good for us to let them know that UU story is different from the Christian story. And to hear us say, we just don't know what happened after Jesus died. That's going to be very comforting to the 80% of people in our society who are agnostics. Here's a faith community that actually says this out loud from the pulpit or in the Sunday school classroom. We just don't know. And it might be as if Jesus died. You probably saw that in the packet. My little sharing of Sophie Faz's resurrection words. When I heard someone else say that after their spouse died, they could hear that person's voice, I began to realize the possible explanation, the gentle explanation for why Jesus's followers heard him and saw him. It was as if he was there in the room for them. It's a nice way to hear. And I think it's good for all these visitors who are going to come to hear that too.
Yep.
And that we're really comfortable with not even wanting to do the resurrection. It's like this sort of discomfort we feel. I think we should share that with everybody. Okay, so now we go to the opportunities that you're finding for emergence as a theme. The opportunities, and then we'll do the things you're going to take away as we hear all these good ideas. And I realize this is sort of short this time, but I want to give everyone a chance. So if you listen to the challenges, what opportunities, and then finally we'll do the takeaways. So your conclusions from our hive mind, as somebody called it the other day. All right, so first on my list is Bob again.
All right. Well, one thing that I discovered that was not in your packet was a practical joke that people would play. And I discovered this on Facebook, in which you would wrap grapes in tin foil to look like they're going to be chocolate eggs. And I thought it might be a bit mean to do that to kids, but what if the kids put together some grapes wrapped in tin foil and offered them to parents and other adults in the congregation, and combine the April Fool theme with the Easter theme.
I love
that. And I actually see a message in it. You never know what's actually going to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
You might look at things and think you know what's happening, but surprise.
Excellent. I had not thought of that when I saw that Facebook thing. And yet, isn't it wonderful when we can get the kids to sort of torture their parents because they know the answer? Excellent. Thank you, Bob, for that. That's great. And Annie, you're next on my screen.
Oh, I didn't realize I was already unmuted. Sorry. I love the grape thing. I love that idea, Bob. I may use that. One of the opportunities for us is that we are in the process of looking at moving to a bigger space, a bigger building. And so the parents and elders and everybody's, that it's just this potent topic. And so for Children's Chapel this month, we're going to talk about the Making Room campaign, and the kind of the emergence of a new building for us, and what that might feel like, and address the anxiety that is in among us about people having all kinds of feelings about possibly leaving this building that people have loved. So that felt like this kind of wonderful opportunity. And so the kids are going to make butterfly cards and little cards that, say whatever the kids decide to hand out during coffee hour, as to try to say, try to calm people's anxieties and say, we believe it's going to be okay. And, have faith in the emergent butterflies among us, or, something. Nice. So that feels like a sweet kind of opportunity that we stumbled on.
I love that. Thank you. And Mary, you're next on my screen.
I'm busy writing down everybody's ideas. Really, the thing that is coming to mind right now is I have pointed out multiple times our tulips coming up, and it goes like they're just tiny right now, but in a week and a half they're going to be huge. And so that's really what we were talking about in the Emergence. That's our main thing, because there's all around our whole building. So that's really all I have right now.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Mary. And Kathleen.
So this past year, I planted, knowing that Santa Monica is very productive in growing things. You don't even have to water stuff. We were wasting our space. We had a lot of nice ground that we could put tomatoes and such in, and so we did a few of those things, and they grew really well, and we got to partake in those, and lettuce is still growing. But this year, the Faith in Action Committee that we have at our church has been really pressuring me to get kids involved in what they're doing, but they don't usually give them the opportunity time-wise to get involved in their activities. And so this year we've decided that April 29th, which is our Faith in Action Sunday for kids, is also the Earth Day service. And so we're going to plant a community garden. So people are going to be able to plant strawberries and tomatoes and such. So we're going to take up pretty much all of our outdoor space now with the community garden for Earth Day. So I think that's really good for the topic of emergence, and takes care of one Sunday for me.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. Thank you, Kathleen. And Amanda.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just say two things, which I'm still kind of grappling with this theme, but it's great to hear people's ideas. One thing is that I have recently made the switch to the Soul Matters, using the Soul Matters curriculum, which we've been doing the worship themes, and I've been doing Tapestry of Faith this year, and it just feels awesome for myself in my position to just really be in this theme, like throughout across church life. Just feels really good. I've been doing it with youth group all year, and in planning worship with my minister. So I just am excited about that for myself. And another thing is I just want to put in for people to know, if not this year, in the future, the Persian New Year celebration is a really wonderful one to explore at this time of year. And I think in terms of the theme of emergence, a lot of stuff about spring there. And anyway, just to lift up a holiday that's very big in Iran, that's not recognized much in this part of the world.
Thank you for that. Isn't that Nowruz?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that from the old Holidays and Holy Days curriculum. They had a Nowruz packet there. Great. Thank you for that, Amanda. And Corinna.
Let me think. For Children's Chapel, I had a family come. Well, first of all, I want to say, and I said this in the chat box, I need that reminder like all the time about not always on Sundays, and I'm trying to do many intentional things to move the conversation that I have with families and engaging them with each other on throughout the week through various social media platforms. One way that I try and also get engagement is through a large bulletin board that we have in the hallway of our next to our sanctuary. Our children's building are actually separate. This one's, so I try to use this bulletin board to have kids and adults doing things together on that. And because of this all ages service on Easter, there will be a lot of different sensory things going on. And one of them will be, we just figured this out with the woman who kind of does the bulletin board with me. We'll be having in the order of service a blank flower shape that a person can write on there. Since we will have just talked about how memory, we keep people close to us, we will write how we would want to be remembered on that. And that will become something sprouting up at the bottom of that bulletin board to kind of then say, so it's kind of a looking back, but also looking forward kind of thing. And the only other thing I saw my was it's where family and their child is on the spectrum, and she's very engaged in the church, and so they're going to take a lead on that. And in the Children's Chapel, we follow up with the Social Justice Project, and we'll probably make a sensory jars or something that we can donate to an organization. That will be so that's how we are. That's a different thing in Emergence, but I'll be tying it in with that in some way.
All right. You're breaking up a little bit, Corinna, but I think we got most of it. Great. Thank you. All right. Let me just quickly check we're doing very well. So now what I recommend is a little time to hold the space. We DREs get to go, we get our monkey brains going, and we're writing down these fantastic ideas. So spend 15 seconds with me in silence to let this sink in before we share what we're going to take away with this. Relax your body and concentrate on your breathing. And as we come back into the awareness of our sharing, and we express the gratitude for this wonderful group of people from ocean to ocean sharing their ideas. Feel in your body these ideas settle and how they might be played out in your congregation. See the people that you serve in front of you and what they might take away from Easter and Earth Day, Passover, wholeness, and a little piece of chanting for our UU faith formation. So, Bob, what are you going to take away from our conversation this afternoon/morning?
I'm going to take away and I've been drawn back into realizing that living the theme together might be the most powerful aspect of it. So I'm looking forward to working and playing with other people, adults and children and youth, to see what emerges this month. and to continuously invite that emergence.
Mhm. And I appreciated your sharing in the brainstorm that we'd never know what's going to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. And Annie.
You know, I think in the, what I'm taking away is, and you know, I think it kind of was sparked by Mary's talking about tulips and how, you know, we adults get so busy living in our heads, and just the reminder that children are our teachers about wonder and awe and reverence for the natural world and the mystery of nature, and that it is the obvious both metaphor and reality of the kind of living emergence. And so I'm sort of called back to that, and just the kind of basic emergent story of nature and wonder and tulips and butterflies.
Isn't it sweet to be there? I used to love getting a pansy from my church, Mainline Unitarian Church in Philly, on Easter. Oh, yeah. Mary, what would you like to share as a takeaway?
I really liked what you said about Sunday morning is just a tiny pearl. I have a hard time planning things or thinking about doing extra things, just because I think families are so busy and all of that. And for Earth Day, I'm responsible for the entire service and everything. And I was considering doing a family event after. I'm totally going to do it because that's what the kids will remember. And I was hemming and hawing, but I'm going to do it. So that reminds me it's important to do those things.
Mm-hmm. And there's a way of looking at it is putting those extra things front and center as the real thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay.
I was privileged to work with Minister Reverend Lydia Ferranti-Roseberry, who would say, "We don't need a sermon today. Let's just do it." I'd get some buy-in before you suggest that. I tend to go overboard. Oh, okay, Kathleen.
I'm really appreciative of someone pointing out that visitors come on Easter Sunday. It's really going to make me a lot more intentional about what I do for Easter Sunday. Put a little bit more thought into it. You know, I was pretty disappointed last month that I didn't get to do all my sessions on balance because the one day we didn't have any kids show up. And so it's like, darn it, I wasted it, but I didn't. I used it for the next week, but then I had an extra session. I was like, that's all right. We'll use it sometime in the future. But, you know, you can get kind of discouraged when you don't get to do the things that you work so hard at. And then you're like, well, I'm not putting that much effort into it next time then. But yeah, I just need to remember the impact that we will have on newcomers. And it might, you know, be the decision factor of whether they're going to come back or not.
Mm-hmm. For Easter. Yeah. Thank you, Kathleen. Amanda.
So people have said some really great things. I really appreciated being reminded about how we're emerging as a faith tradition around taking on racism and white supremacy in a deeper way. That was good. And we are having the Racial Justice Task Force visit our kids this month. And so maybe we can bring sort of the emergence idea into that. And then I also liked what was just said about, I think Bob said it, about emergence. We never know what's going to emerge. And that just made me think like emergence is mystery. They're both really linked. And that made me wonder, is there something that could emerge, like something really concrete that could emerge this month for the kids, like maybe something we could take some physical thing that we could take a layer away each week that that would have some interesting, meaningful end point. So those were a couple thoughts I had.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, Corinna. Oh, you're just muted. You're muted.
Oh, there. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I would think my most important takeaway, again, yes, is to not get so concerned about Sundays. I think that's my biggest challenge, although I think Easter is a special case. I did have a family ask me about how to explain Easter at the beginning of March, and I gave that family a very long explanation, which I developed into my column, and which I will release earlier. I'll probably do it today or tomorrow, and that way that pump can be primed a little bit too, I think. So they'll get a sneak peek at what the service was about. Yeah, I think the anxiety comes from parents, not the children. Yeah, I mentioned, I heard Amanda talk about the Soul Matters curriculum in deploying that. That's the whole reason we adopted Soul Matters, was so that we could have what the families were and the children were doing be the same as what adults were doing. I want to move to all multi-generational services at some point, but right now we do it 4 times a year, and the rest of the Sundays the children are in there and through the Wonderbox moment. But being able to have a theme is, I think, a very good experiment for us to understand that we can support faith development outside of Sundays, and the theme really helps to do that.
Awesome, Corinna. Thank you. I wanted to just gather the reflections of several of you who have said the Justice Task Force or another task force is taking on one of these Sundays, because that will really help your thematic ministry. So as long as RE is a silo, that's some of the business talk these days, that you have a music silo and a RE silo and a worship silo and a social justice silo. And if RE has to reinvent church for the children, such as you have to do the justice work, the music work, the worship work, your own children's chapel, and then you're going to go nuts. You're going to go nuts as a religious educator. But if you, as a religious educator, can pull in the resources that are doing this in your church, then that will make your job more thematic throughout your staff and congregation, and less RE has to reinvent a whole church in itself. So one of the things that I used to teach in a Renaissance module on administration was take this list of things and try to delegate every single one of them. And it's really good practice to then say, okay, I'm going to give the whole piece of Earth Day, and Mary's got Earth Day on her shoulders. I'm going to give that whole piece to the Earth Day Task Force, or whatever it would be called. That's bringing the congregation in and delegating out from your responsibilities. So I always say to new DREs, so what's the ministry? What's the most important ministry that you're doing? Is it buying the plastic eggs at the best place at Target? Or is it writing something in your newsletter and preparing for visitors on Easter? So my RE committee, so there's a little soapbox. The other soapbox I have is I want to get rid of CP, and then you can substitute a word in for the actual word that is the curse word, but cheap plastic stuff, right? So if we're going to make the statement against what our consumerist program in our society wants us to do, we get rid of cheap plastic stuff in our congregations. That's why we always did the soup hunt. I just saw the thing on Facebook was talking about a pet food canned hunt. Whatever you can do to live your values and reflect on it. Yeah, Karina has something to say.
I had mentioned in the chat about the petting zoo, and I think I mentioned that last call, and Bob wanted to know more about it. So we are ditching our egg hunt, and I found a wonderful organization who know about Unitarian Universalists. They had a history. Someone, the owners, I think, they bring small animals and they fence an area, 5 schools, and given a mat, and then they bring the animal and they are allowed to hold the animal for a certain period of time. So after service on Easter, they will all get a chance to hold a real bunny or a real chick or a hedgehog or an iguana, and they're thrilled. They're really super excited. And I think we will have a craft table going on with some things while children wait to get, and I imagine there will be adults too. But we'll see how it goes. I hope it's not a complete zoo, you might say, but yeah.
I love it. Oh, I don't know if we lost her, but I love that. I love it. Annie Jefferson used to do something like that. Do you still do something with animals?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Back in the old days. Yeah. Cool. So what do you, so here's what I say to you. What do your families want? How can we serve them on Easter? And maybe it's as simple as holding a bunny at Karina's church, or doing something with flowers that the kids will remember. These busy professionals with double jobs, and they want a family moment. And maybe holding a bunny or seeing a chick is what's going to be the most important thing for Easter. I'm so glad you're doing that, Karina. Or duck.
It's definitely one of this, I'm the boss, I can make this decision. I've only been doing this job for a year, but I can say, I think we're not going to do this. And I, of course, first talked it over thoroughly with my RE committee and really got their buy-in as well. You know, I'm not that much of a dictator, but yeah, no, I did.
Awesome.
It's a tradition.
I found a donkey rescue place in the Denver area, and they brought a mother and a foal rescued donkey for Easter one year. Actually, no, it was Palm Sunday. They were very Christian, and I think they were a little surprised at what I was saying to the children, but we all went out to the playground, and the mother and the baby were there, and the baby was like 6 weeks old, just break your heart. And I had told the families to bring carrots. And so half the kids would take a bite of their carrot, give it to the donkey, and then take a bite of their carrot and give it to the donkey. And I was like, okay. So the other thing that this donkey rescue group shared with me was that there is a cross on the back of the donkey. It's darker hair, darker fur, and that's where Jesus rode. And they shared that with the children too. I thought that was very sweet. Yeah. So yeah, animals at Easter. Yeah. Karina, do you have something? Yeah.
I have one more thing to say. On these all ages services, we don't have a lay leader. It's just me and the minister. And I was just rewriting the welcome, that our kind of standard welcome that we have. And I take that moment to try and reframe everyone's expectations about the service and say that we model welcoming behavior. We might hear more noise and see more movement on this Sunday than other Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And that having children with us is a sign of our growth. And I'm just trying to set expectations over in any opportunity that I have. I mean, that's the kind of a message I give for those first 15 minutes on a normal Sunday, but I will be very more explicit about it this Sunday, and just try and understand that diversity is also generational, and that and I think they're getting it. I mean, I've been there for a while now. I think they love seeing the children, but there's definitely a time where it was like, no, it has to be kind of quiet and calm and that. But they're coming along. So I think if you do plant those seeds over time and not just be like, okay, now we're going to change, but we say slowly over time, I think maybe they'll decide for themselves that they want to have multi-generational services all the time, and it won't have had anything to do with me. So.
Another comment I'll share with you, Corinna, is that it's not just children who make noise, but sometimes it's our elderly people. You know, they're fiddling with their hearing aid, or their cell phone goes off, or they're shouting to their bestest friend next door. What'd he say? So I agree. Getting used to little mess. And here's the movement in England, the messy church movement. The Anglicans are sort of not doing much sermonizing, and they're getting very involved with messy church. Yeah, good. We are fortunate in having just a few more minutes. Is there something that you would like to share that you've been thinking about in this conversation?
I actually just got a fabulous idea. So on our egg hunt, where we have to find one of each color, I was thinking about using that that poster of the Rainbow Principles, where it's got the rainbow with the arcs, and in each one of those eggs, stick a strip of paper that will need to be glued onto that poster. And so, in order to get their treat bag, they would have to glue all of those on there and come and show it to me before they would get their treat bag.
Oh, lovely.
So that will help them learn their principles as well, right?
Right. Exactly. Good job. I think that's getting a lot of thumbs up there. Cool. One last thing before our goodbye. I wish, Pam, you would write something. She's thinking about it. Okay, she's looking. It's tough having, I got laryngitis for Christmas Eve service. We had 3 services, and I was the leader, and I had absolutely no voice one year. It was pretty bad. Yes,
I just thinking about what Corinna was saying about inclusion of young people. I think it's always really important to remind people that if you're ever wanting to exclude one group of people, it never just stays confined to that. I mean, it's not right to exclude one group, but it never stays confined to one group. Like you were saying about elderly folks, we had a similar thing about children making noise, and it was people with disabilities, like a lot of people. Anyway, I just think that's a good reminder for people. And young people, I think, I don't know, somehow the way that young people are oppressed feels separate for people from the way that other people are oppressed. And it's really not, so anyway.
Yeah, good. Very good. I'm going to post this on our YouTube channel so our colleagues can watch it and get ideas. And there's at least between 15 and 25 people who come and join us on these recordings. So this is a shout out to you if you're watching as a recording. I hope that someday the timing will work for you, but I'm glad that you get to see this kind of sharing right now as you're watching in your jammies maybe. All right. How you doing, Pam? There we go. Now you have to pull it back so we can see all. I have absolutely loved this conversation What's emerging for me is more energy. I've been sick most of this year, feeling depleted. Blessings, so many ideas. Thank you. That's a lovely blessing for us to leave on. I hope you feel better, Pam. I hope you all have a good spring and join us next time. I'm going to end this recording and I'll stay on if anyone wants to chat.